Hey guys, on today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast, the first reactions and reviews for Argylle. Henry Cavill's Argylle is out, and they look terrible. Also, is it time for the Oscars to just eliminate one of the screenplay categories and just have one best screenplay category? Also, drama! Two critic associations, one legitimate one and one not so legitimate one, are actually going to court against each other over defamation. Why? We're going to discuss that a little bit. Also, the actress who played Daredevil in the Netflix Daredevil series, well, she was asked about whether or not she will be coming back like other cast members for the Daredevil Born Again series. We're going to talk about her response for that. Bad Bunny's former film, El Muerto, that got kind of sidelined, it's back on again, but without Bad Bunny. Also, the director of X-Men First Class is saying that Deadpool 3 is going to save the MCU. That and a whole bunch more. The John Campea Show podcast starts right now. Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show podcast, coming from right here in our quaint little studio, brought to you in part by our friends at Mint Mobile. I am, of course, your host, the guy whose voice is still very gone and still struggling with some chest inflammation, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies, movie news, TV, and streaming, and all sorts of good stuff, not just giving you our opinions, but also giving you some background, information, and context so you guys can form your own well-informed opinions, whether they're the same or completely different than ours. Joining me in studio today, we've got Ray Ora.
He's doing it for the game, baby, like Michael Jordan in that flu game.
Jonathan Voico's here.
I'm doing it too.
Robert Meyer Burnett is here.
I'm doing it for the love.
Whoa.
And most importantly, you guys are here. Thank you so much for being here, making the show part of your day. And here's how today's show is going to go. We're going to break it into two parts. First part of the show, we're going to talk about those predetermined topics. In the last part of the show, we got to keep today's show a little bit shorter than normal, but we are still going to squeeze in a few questions from you guys who are watching live. Just use the super chat feature in the live chat, and we'll get to a couple of those before we end off the show. All right, guys. With all that down, let's get things going with this. You guys know my boy, my boy, Henry Cavill. Love that man. My favorite Superman. And I love this guy so much that even though I have sworn off going to anything studio related, I don't go to press junkets, I don't go to red carpets, I don't go to press screenings, I don't go to any of that. But when I got the invitation to go to see an advanced press screening of Argylle, I went, oh, well, maybe I'll do that. Now, I didn't end up going last night because I am under the weather, and I decided it would be responsible of me to go when I should be trying to recover as quickly as I can. So I didn't go. And it might sound right now like that might have been a good choice, because the first reviews for Argylle are out right now. They're not good. They're not good. Last time I checked, a few minutes ago, getting close to 70 reviews, 32% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Went up.
Did it go up?
35.
How many reviews?
We got that right now. It's 59 reviews.
Okay, so see, Rotten Tomatoes does that sometimes. When I checked it earlier, there were more reviews. There was like almost 70 reviews, and the rating was 60. So sometimes, until it settles after a whole day, so that was probably older information. At any rate, I thought we'd take a look at what some of the critics are saying.
Let's do it.
About my Henrys. Look what they did to my boy. His movie Argylle. Inverse said this: it's a nesting doll of a movie, a glib, winking, referential spy comedy that layers twist upon twist on top of each other to hide the fact that there's really nothing at the center. Ooh. Screen Crush wrote, a talented cast trapped in an endless story with a fake cat. I know that was a bit of a spoiler. RogerEbert.com writes, it sputters as it attempts to re-engineer the mechanics of better films. Then a critic who liked it, from Consequence. While the premise might be as familiar as an old sweater, it's enhanced by the way in which director Matthew Vaughn incorporates his signature artful violence, delivering 2024's first truly enjoyable action film. Okay, there's somebody who liked it. Didn't seem to love it, but seemed to like it.
The action anyway.
The Times in the UK say it's a testament to the low-grade lethargy that informs so much of the writing here that his character template never evolves further than Henry Cavill plus wacky haircut equals hilarity.
It is pretty funny.
It's a funny
I
haircut.
do like that haircut.
The Messenger wrote, though Bryce Dallas Howard is charming, the twist-dependent action comedy gets tiresome. Newsday wrote, it all feels overly familiar, but the main problem with Argylle is that we never care about the characters.
Oh.
The Daily Telegraph wrote, it feels like an achievement of sorts that while no one in Argylle can actually pronounce the name Argylle properly, this would not make a list of the top 50 most annoying things about the film. And I remember reading a little bit earlier today, the Rolling Stone headline was, the big twist of Argylle is that it's a truly terrible movie.
Oh.
Look what they're doing to my boy, Rob.
Vicious.
Look what they're doing to my boy. Now, listen, I got to tell you, though, I didn't mention it on the show, but you guys know I was thinking it. I was starting to worry about this film because the review embargo, this movie opens tomorrow, going to be in theaters tomorrow. I've got my tickets to it. The review embargo for it didn't lift until today, the day before the movie opened. And whenever that happens, not every time, but most of the time, that is a big red flag in the air saying, the studio yelling, we don't believe in this movie. We believe that when we show this to people, those people aren't going to like it, and we'll talk about how it's not good. Therefore, we want to hold off this thing till the day before the movie comes out. And I got a little bit worried that was going to be the case. Rob, I haven't seen it yet.
Nope.
Ray and I and Ann, we may come walking out of Argylle tomorrow and go, hey, we like that. It was fun. Right now,
I'm getting sick, man. I don't.
I don't know if I can make it to the screening tomorrow. Maybe we'll walk out and go, hey, yeah, I get it. Other critics didn't like it, but we did. I don't know. Maybe I'll like it. Hopefully I will. But this isn't positive stuff, Rob. Are you surprised to hear this? I don't know. What do you make of the reviews we're hearing?
You know, I am, because I'm a big fan of Matthew Vaughn's brand of action, humor, over-the-top, hell's-a-pop, and violence combined with spy thriller action. Like, I love the first Kingsman.
So good.
X-Men First Class, like we've talked about. Really great movie.
So good.
But what's interesting is when I saw the trailer for this movie, I thought it could go either way, because this kind of balance is tough. Guy Ritchie does the same kind of thing. Quentin Tarantino in a movie like Inglourious Bastards and Django Unchained kind of does the same thing too. But he's able to keep that tone in place. With Brad Pitt's character, Gorlami, when it's goofy, but he never lets it go too far.
Yep.
And it is really hard. I mean, Dr. King Schultz in Django Unchained is, again, that is a very difficult tonal high wire act. And if you don't make it, and I was watching this trailer and it looked fun to me. I'm like, as long as he nails the tone, like in the first Kingsman, we're going to be okay.
Not like the second Kingsman.
Not like this.
Because that was not so good.
No, and it's funny to me that we hear that a lot of critics say it isn't working. And I'm disappointed because I was really looking forward to this.
Yeah, I mean, I was stoked to hear it. I even liked the first trailer quite a bit. Like, it's not the first time we've seen a story go, wait a minute, the things you write actually happen. Like, we've seen that trope used once or twice, but it's not an overly used one.
No.
And I thought you got Bryce Dallas Howard, you got my boy Henry Cavill in there with a solid director. I had a lot of hope. And again, I haven't seen it yet. I might see it tomorrow and like it. I hope I do, but this isn't promising.
It harks back. One of the most inexplicable movies that I've ever seen that didn't hit that I loved was Man from U.N.C.L.E.
I love that movie.
And that movie to me was kind of like, if I were to equate it to another movie, it would be like Soderbergh's remake of Ocean's 11. They both had, like, Ocean's 11 was not the greatest movie in the world, but boy, does that movie have staying power. Every time I watch it, I love it. It's so much fun to watch. You just like those characters. And I know that Armie Hammer and his difficulties playing Ilya Kuryakin made it so, and the movie didn't make a ton of money, but that movie, I love it. And I love Henry Cavill in it. And I was kind of looking forward. I was hoping that there was a little bit of that Man from U.N.C.L.E. flavor.
Yeah. But now we need to turn our attention from Argylle to the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which put out a banger of a trailer yesterday, and hope that one works better. Guys, what do you think? Does this hurt your enthusiasm a little bit? I'm not going to lie. It hurts my enthusiasm. I'm still going to go see it. Hopefully I like it, but look what they've done to my boy. Anyway, guys, whatever you guys think, jump on down and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. With that down, let's talk about this. You know, there's been a little bit of controversy about, I mean, nothing world-breaking, but a little bit of controversy about the fact that Barbie, going into the Academy Awards, has been listed under the Best Adapted Screenplay category instead of Original Screenplay, when every other body in the world, including the authoritative body, the Writers Guild of America, have said, nah, this is an original screenplay. The Oscars have been decided to be the only ones to list it under an adapted screenplay. There's been some talk about that, but it raises the question, why do they even have two separate categories for it? And that is the topic of today's Mint Mobile Hotline question of the day. Listen, guys, if you got a topic for our show and you'd like to hear your voice on our show, go ahead and call the Mint Mobile Hotline anytime, 24/7 at 951-268-4259. Today's question is about, well, those two categories. Check it out.
Hey, John and Drew, here's an Oscar question for you. Do you think that the writing categories should simply be combined into one writing award? Do you think that would make any sense? Anyways, love to know your thoughts about different ways like that to potentially streamline some of these awards. Thanks for taking my question, and don't have a good day. Have a great one.
All right, man. Thanks a lot for calling that in. And, you know, it's an interesting question. Why do we have two separate categories? Now, for the record, I have historically been a defender of having two separate writing categories. If you go back to my AMC days, you'll probably find me talking about this and explaining my position about why I feel there should be two separate writing categories. I talk about the fact that, you know, it's a little bit of a different mindset you got to have from writing a completely original idea where you can draw from anything, go in any direction you want, versus adapting from an existing, whether it's a book, a novel, an old TV show, what have you. Is a little bit of a different approach. And I made the argument for why I could see why you would have two separate categories. But Rob, as the years have gone on, I kept looking at it, and I've done a little bit of writing myself. You've done a lot of writing. At the end of the day, writing is writing. And what has made this more complicated is this situation like with Barbie and the Academy Awards. It seems to be becoming more and more arbitrary. Because by the true definition of the Academy guidelines, because I read them the other day, to be an adapted screenplay, number one, you've got to either be a sequel. And a lot of people argue about that. Like Toy Story was an original screenplay, but Toy Story 3 was nominated under Best Adapted Screenplay because there was already Toy Story movies. So that's a little bit confusing to some people, whatever. But also you're an adapted screenplay if you come from a pre-existing definitive work. Like that Steve Jobs movie was based on a biography by a guy who wrote the book, and the movie was based on that book. Whereas in Barbie, there is no definitive source material that was the source of the movie. And historically, it's been problematic too about what's an adapted screenplay. Rob, you remember that Steve Carell, Channing Tatum, Mark Ruffalo movie, Foxcatcher?
Yeah, the wrestling coach.
Yep. Steve Carell got nominated for Best Actor in that. I think Homeboy got nominated for Best Supporting. Ruffalo got Best Supporting Actor nominations. Great film. It's absolutely fabulous. It is a true story.
Right.
It's real events. It got nominated for Best Screenplay. Do you think this movie, based on a real event, based on a true story, do you think the Oscars put it in Best Adapted Screenplay or Best Original Screenplay? It was put in the category Best Original Screenplay. Now, that's because, according to the Oscar, by the letter of the law, there was not a completed work about the Foxcatcher story already. So, but to me, that makes no sense. Whether you're getting it from a completed work or there's the story. It's a real life story. So and you can come on one side or the other of that issue. That's fine. I'm just making the point that there's not a hell of a lot of consistency with the Academy when it comes to the two separate categories. And so it's almost becoming like an excuse to make sure multiple films get Oscars. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying it just kind of feels like it a little bit. So while Rob, have spent years defending the idea of having two separate writing categories, and I still acknowledge there's a bit of a different approach to writing one than writing another. You could also argue there's a different approach from writing a historical piece versus writing a dramatic thriller. There's a difference between writing a comedy and writing a based on a true story biopic event. There's different approaches to that too. I am now kind of coming around to the side, Rob, that I think maybe they should do away with the two separate categories and just call it Best Screenplay. I thought differently a few months ago. I may feel differently a few months from now. Rob, what do you think about this whole situation?
Well, I think for me, it's pretty cut and dried in the sense that if you are adapting a previously existing work, like if a historical event is a historical event, but they haven't written an article about it, they haven't ever contextualized it in some kind of a book, or then it hasn't been adapted. So if you have to adapt it, it's an original. You might be telling retelling an actual historical event, but to contextualize it on paper is something very different. And like for me, I'm just putting the finishing touches on a screenplay that I've written that's an adaptation of a book. I didn't create the characters. I didn't create the situations. There are certain things that I created that are not in the book. You know, certain things that I focused on and changed. I would never say ever that it's an original screenplay. It is absolutely adapted from a novel. The novelist created the characters, the situations, the milieu, the premise, everything. So because I'm doing that, Stanley Kubrick, you know, for the most part, Lolita, even Dr. Strangelove, which was a dark black comedy, was adapted from a book. And you'd have to call that an adaptation because even though the book was very, very serious, he turned it into a black comedy. If there's something you are taking and adapting.
To your point, the original Top Gun was considered an adapted screenplay. It wasn't from a book. It's from an article.
An article.
Yeah.
And so I think that if there is a previously existing something that's written and you're adapting from it, it has to be considered adapted. Now, Barbie, I don't think Barbie exists as a thing. Now, there's been animated Barbie stuff and all that, but
none of that has been the source of the movie.
Right. They had to come up with the premise, the whole idea of Barbie Land. All that stuff was they took this thing, an inanimate object, and imbued it with stuff that they created out of whole cloth. I think Barbie's an original screenplay. I think it absolutely is. The very idea that Ken sings. I mean, that I'm Ken. You know, I don't recall from my sister owning Barbies that there was ever a singing Ken doll. So the idea that he even has a theme song is something that was a total conceit of the writers. And Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig, I think, absolutely deserved an original screenplay award because nothing like that ever existed with the Barbie character.
Right. But it brings us back around to the question then. Aside from what should the distinction be between adapted original, and to our caller's point, yeah, are we past the time where there even should? The Academy Award, I believe the Academy introduced Best Adapted Screenplay in 1940. And then for a couple of years in the 50s, they actually thought, nah, this isn't a good idea. And they got rid of it. And then they just had one category. And then they brought it back. Are we at a point in history that we should just have the one category so there's no confusion about what's adapted, what's original? Or should we continue to have two separate ones?
I think we should absolutely continue to have both categories because they're two different art forms. Creating characters in a story out of whole cloth is different than finding a novel and adapting that novel that someone else created the characters in the story out of whole cloth.
Trying to breathe different life into it.
Absolutely. And I think both are very different disciplines. You know, when you don't have to come up with your own characters and you don't have to coming up with your own original story, that's a really hard thing to do. Face a blank piece of paper, and what's the first thing that you do? What's the first thing you see? You see what? Well, if you read a book, you know what that is. And if you choose to use the beginning of the book or whatever, you've already got your roadmap. But an original screenplay, you got nothing.
See, I've argued sometimes that I actually think writing an adapted screenplay is sometimes harder because as with an original screenplay, you don't have any boundaries.
Oh, but I would agree with you.
Right, like, because you're going to now take something that already exists and you have to breathe life into it as it is. There are certain limitations you have that an original screenplay doesn't.
I think that's 100%. And your own Canadian, one of my favorite filmmakers, David Cronenberg, adapted 2 books that people considered unfilmable in Crash and Naked Lunch. I don't even know how he did that. How do you do that? I don't know.
Yeah, it's difficult stuff. So again, I'm sure this is something that'll be wrestled with for a while to come. How do you guys feel? Do you think there should be 2 different categories, or should there just be one? Heck, some people have proposed there should be multiple. There should be best writing for comedy. There should be best writing for drama. I mean, I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm saying I've heard other people put that forward. How do you guys feel about this? Let us know down in the description below. All right. With that down, guys, let's talk about this. We are not a TMZ channel. I don't like talking about, behind the scenes drama. I like talking about things that directly impact the movie watching experience. Whether Ezra Miller can continue to be Flash, that's a direct impact on our movie watch. It does Jonathan Majors continue to play Kang. That's a direct impact on what we're going to see in the movies. I generally don't like covering stuff like this, but it's actually really fascinating. And it touches on something of a little bit of a bigger topic. There are, of course, in the world of film criticism, multiple critic bodies. Multiple, lots of them. New York Film Critics Society, the Austin Film Critics Society, and of course, the biggest film critics society is, of course, the Critics' Choice Association. Right? Critics' Choice. That's the big one. Now, I think they have like 600 voting members, something like that. Now, to get you guys caught up, a bunch of years ago, there was another one, a smaller one, that called itself the Los Angeles Online Film Critics Society. I believe that was the full name. It might be a little, but it was basically Los Angeles Online Film Critics. Not Los Angeles Film Critics, Los Angeles Online Film Critics so-and-so. They later reformatted themselves to become the Hollywood Critic Association, the HCA. Now, later, to compound the confusion, they changed their names again, but they liked the 3 letters, so they kept the same 3 letters, and they renamed themselves from the Hollywood Critic Association to the Hollywood Creative Alliance.
Which really doesn't make sense.
Makes no sense. It makes 0 sense. You are not a creative alliance. You are a critic association. That is what you are. You do not make films, but whatever, And for the record, I have a bunch of friends in the HCA. Really good people. Actually, a guy who's been frequently and will continue to be a guest on our show, Sean Chandler, is a member of the HCA. One of our very good friends, Scott Mance, who is no longer with the HCA, but he was one of the co-founders of the HCA, right? I got a lot of friends there. That doesn't mean I think they're a legitimate organization, but I got a lot of good friends in there. Well, some of you may remember a few weeks ago that the big critic association, the Critics' Choice Association, sent out a memo. You remember this headline? Sent out a memo to their members that says, hey, if you are in the HCA, you got to resign from the HCA. You cannot be in the HCA and in the Critics' Choice Association, because they said the following. Now, this comes us from Variety. The CA shared a message with its members Wednesday night about the policy. Remember, this is a couple weeks ago. About the policy, stating that those who are currently a member of both organizations must confirm that they have successfully resigned from the HCA if they wish to remain a member. Why? Well, the reason the Critics' Choice Association has taken this action is that we have evidence that a representative of the HCA has improperly suggested to at least one studio, and we suspect more, that it could influence the Critics' Choice Awards voting in a way that led to a studio reaching out to the Critics' Choice Association and request that action be taken to protect the integrity of our awards. The message reads, of course, that HCA threat was empty, but the Critics' Choice Association cannot ignore this. All right. That happened, and according to a new report, like 70 out of 75 people who were members of both the HCA and the Critics' Choice Association have indeed resigned and left the HCA. They've left the Hollywood Creative Alliance. They've gone. As a result now, the HCA is launching a lawsuit against the Critics' Choice Association. And this is from today. They're saying this: according to court documents, the HCA claims that the Critics' Choice Association has defamed the organization in quote unquote an attempt to boycott and steal members of the HCA. I'm sorry. I thought they were already members of the Critics' Choice Association. How can they be stealing members if they're already members of the Critics' Choice Association? Anyway, and is seeking preliminary and permanent injunctive relief, along with quote-unquote appropriate compensatory remedies, that means give us money, and fees and costs in response to the organization's actions. Okay, so let's big picture this for a second, okay? This is where it gets spicy. The Critics' Choice Association, the big legitimate one, is saying, hey, we've gotten contacted by a studio that says one of HCA's people is telling the studios that they can influence the Critics' Choice Awards. This is bad for us. Therefore, we're creating a policy that, hey, if you want to be a member of the HCA, you can. If you want to be a member of the Critics' Choice, you can, but you can't be a member of both because we've got studios coming to us now saying that they have concerns. And that's very bad for us, says the Critics' Choice. By the way, I don't have a lot of deep love for the Critics' Choice Association either. But in this case, I think they were very reasonable. They didn't put out a letter to say nobody should be a member of the HCA. They put out a letter saying, hey, look, if you're a member of both us and them, you got to choose. You got to choose. Because we got studios contacting us saying that there's a problem. Now, here's where the fire gets lit. The HCA, in bringing a defamation lawsuit against the Critics' Choice, they're basically saying the Critics' Choice is lying. In a defamation suit, you've got to prove that the people you're suing lied. You got to prove that.
Like you have to prove damages too.
Yeah. And if Rob came in and stole my Pringles, and I go online and say, Rob stole my Pringles. Rob may want to sue me for defamation, but then Rob has to prove that I'm lying. Well, he's going to have a hard time doing that because he stole my Pringles, right? You got to prove. I don't have to prove he did. He's got to prove I'm lying. That's how our court system works. And in an article in the Hollywood Reporter, it's going to be real hard for the Hollywood Critic Association, the Hollywood Creative Agency, the Los Angeles Online Film Critic, and whatever. It's going to be really, really hard for the HCA to prove that the Critics' Choice is lying about them when the Hollywood Reporter just released publicly a very damning email from the CEO of the HCA. This is what is written in the Hollywood Reporter. On January 3rd, ahead of the January 5th start of the Critics' Choice final voting, so just before the final voting for the Critics' Choice Award started, as the HCA sought to confirm talent attendance at its award show. I believe they call their award show the Astra Awards or something like that. HCA co-founder / CEO Scott Menzel wrote to studio publicists saying the following. Remember, he's trying to get famous people to come to their award show, which is part of his job, right? He's the CEO of this organization. You're putting on an award show. You're trying to get celebrities to come. Nothing wrong with that in and of itself. But he wrote to the studios and says, I do think it's important. This is what he's saying to the studio publicists. I do think it's important to note to all talent that the Critics' Choice voting opens this weekend, and there are about 50 members who are part of both groups, including 2 of us in leadership, plus there are several other members who are in BAFTA, SAG, and the Academy. I would really hammer that point home because it could be a make or break for a lot of people. 50 votes is a lot. And by the way, it's actually more than 50. It was more than 50. Let me read what he wrote again. I think it's important to note, this is what he's saying to the studios, that all talent, that the Critics' Choice, the other guys, the bigger guys, their voting opens this weekend, and there are about 50 members who are part of both groups, including 2 of us in leadership, and there are several other members who are in BAFTA and SAG and the Academy, and I would really hammer that point home because it could be a make or break for a lot of them. 50 votes is a lot. Essentially, this is a 1940s mafia dude going to a local business owner saying, hey, it's a nice store. It'd be a shame if somebody came along and broke your windows. Now, look, there's an argument to be made that the CEO of the HCA didn't mean anything by that. Maybe just suggesting, hey, it's important to put in FaceTime, right? Now, look. Now, if this guy stood in front of me right now and said to me, Campea, I was just trying to make the point that it's important to let your face be seen, I would have no reason not to believe him, okay? But you have to have the basic human intelligence to reread your own email and go, this could read really badly.
Like a veiled threat.
It's a veiled threat. And hey, listen, again, if he says he didn't mean it that way, I take him at his word. But you have to have the intelligence of at least a kindergartner to look at the email and go, oh, but it could totally come across like a veiled threat. Maybe he didn't mean it that way. But I would really hammer that point because that could be a make or break for a lot of you. 50 votes is a lot. The message implies, whether he intended or not, the message implies if your client doesn't show up to our award show, you could be losing 50 votes in the upcoming Critics' Choice Awards thing. Be a shame if that happened. It is one of the most monumentally stupid things I could contemplate reading. This is going to kill their organization. Or at least it should remove the CEO out. I mean, again, even if he didn't mean it, and again, I will choose to believe the best. I will choose to believe that's not how he intended it. He wasn't trying to be nefarious. I will choose to believe that. You've proven yourself completely incompetent to do the job because you just wrote to studios fucking threatening them. Whether you intended it or not, this is a smoking gun. You have no chance of winning this lawsuit because you got to go to court now and say, Your Honor, the Critics' Choice is lying about us, saying that we were applying undue pressure. The judge is going to go, well, I got this email that you wrote saying, come to our show or you're going to lose awards and other award ceremonies. They got no leg to stand on here. And I wanted to make this point. This story to me is proof that the system works. Not all the time and not perfectly. Studios are very sensitive about finding this stuff out. They see even the hint of it, they talk about it, they go to other people about it, they report it, and they self-police themselves, and it gets exposed and gets brought out, and the matter gets settled. It would be better if this never happened in the first place, but when it happens, this is an industry, ever since Sony made up a fake film critic a bunch of years ago, this is an industry that is very sensitive to even the appearance of corruption in their voting systems. And let's not be naive and don't think there isn't any of it, but to make sure there are safeties in place to make sure it doesn't start happening on a broad scale, and they got busted. Rob, this is an industry you and I travel in the circles of. We have friends in the Critics' Choice Association. We have many friends. One of our friends is one of the co-founders of the HCA. It's important to note, Scott Mance is no longer there. He left years ago. But so we have friends in both of these bodies here. You hear this story. What do you make of this?
Well, just because you're an idiot doesn't mean you can say it's defamation. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. The Critics' Choice Awards, we showed a picture just now. It's, 29 years old? So there is at least a semblance of credibility for the Critics' Choice Awards. They've had an award show that's star-studded. They've been around, and All they do is try and show that here are these good critics, hopefully that they're legitimate critics, that their opinions are not for sale. So that's all they do, is to make sure that the critics that are part of that organization are legitimate and that their criticism is valid and the studios can trust them. Here's another guy that the Hollywood Creative Alliance, whatever that means, is not only trying to strong-arm people with an email, but then turns around and sues the Critics' Choice Awards for defamation after he's already sent a letter to the studio informing them that maybe, we've got some of the... This is the death of the Hollywood Creative Alliance. This is because no one is going to ever want to hear from anybody who's a part of that organization again.
Unless they change leadership. I think cleaning house, changing leadership could
think they should start again, because this is already... How many times have we seen this particular organization run afoul of... Look, if you want to be a critic, go be a critic. Critics are great. I believe in film criticism. We need great film criticism. We're missing great film criticism. It's always useful. This organization doesn't seem to be interested in criticism at all. It seems they want to hobnob with stars. They want to put on their award shows. They want to talk to studios about anything but criticizing their work. And sending strong-arm tactics to a studio and then turning around and suing another group that says these guys are acting in a way that isn't, perhaps in our all best interests. I mean, I look at this kind of stuff. I see this. To me, this just represents another example of the entitlement of the current age that we live through. Do your job. Do the work. If you want to be a legitimate organization, concentrate on what your organization does. Don't try and strong-arm people to get celebrities to show up at your award show. You want celebrities to show up at your award show? Make sure that your organization is full of integrity and honesty. And make sure that it stands as a beacon that the industry can point to and go, we're going to support these people because they're legit. And we appreciate what they try and do. What Menzel did was not that.
Yeah, again, there's clearly a line that got crossed here, which, again, while I have many friends who are in the HCA, I don't know the inner workings of it. I don't know how it runs. From the outside looking in, it's looked like it's held itself together. We never talk about it on the show, but they've been involved in a number of controversies over the last couple of years that is honestly outside of the purview of this.
Sure.
But this is directly impacting now what we would call the credibility of the award season, which is very relevant to what it is we talk about.
Well, we talk about it every day.
Yeah. So this lawsuit is going to go nowhere. I think if the HCA is to, you don't think they can survive at all? I think they can, but they got to sweep out the leadership and get new leadership in.
Look, I think if you want to, I think it's great. There's so many new online pundits and there's so many new areas of criticism. And I think fostering the new generation of critics is an important one. And rather than as print is being dismantled, online is where critics are coming from. I'm all for fostering an online critics organization and encourage those people to do the best film criticism possible. So an organization like this could be very, very important, but not when they act like this.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, guys, what do you think about this whole thing? Go ahead and let us know. All right. With that down, guys, we still got to talk about the actress who played Elektra in the Daredevil series, talking about whether or not she'll be back for Daredevil Born Again. El Muerto is back on and being developed, but without Bad Bunny. And apparently, according to one X-Men director, Deadpool 3 is going to save the MCU. But before we do, we're going to take a quick second and thank one of the sponsors of today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast, our friends at Mint Mobile. Guys, we want to take a second and thank a sponsor of this video, Mint Mobile. On average, it takes about 30 days for a person to break their New Year's resolution. So if saving money was on your 2024 list, your odds aren't looking that great. Luckily, I have a 100% guaranteed way to save you money this year. Just switch to Mint Mobile. For a limited time, wireless plans from Mint Mobile are $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. That's unlimited talk, text, and data for $15 a month. I've told you guys many times that after switching to Mint Mobile, I am spending less than a third on my cell bill than I used to with a major carrier. Say goodbye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. All Mint plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. And don't worry about having to change phones or numbers. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. So guys, to get this new customer offer and your new 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/Campea. That's mintmobile.com/Campea. Cut your wireless bills to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/Campea. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. And thank you to our friends at Mint Mobile for being my mobile service provider and sponsoring today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast. All right, guys, with that down, let's talk about this, shall we? A little bit of Daredevil. It's not a full day unless you're talking a little bit about Daredevil. Now, of course, Daredevil's been through a lot of stuff. Like Marvel announced they were bringing over Daredevil, but it wasn't going to be the true Netflix version of Daredevil. Then they changed their minds completely. Now it is. Foggy and Karen weren't going to be there. Now they are. And all this kind of stuff. And that has inevitably led to a lot of people to talk about one of the fan favorites from the Netflix Daredevil series, Elodie Yung as Elektra. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a Jennifer Garner guy. But, oh my God. Woo. That woman sitting across the room from me, looking at me like that, I forget my name. It's like, what was it? Where am I? Why am I here? I mean, she is stunning, and she was great in the role.
She was.
She brought a mystery to the character, a ferocity to the character, an eroticism to the character. Like, she just brought all of it. And now, by the way, she's got another show. She got a show on Fox called The Cleaning Lady, which I've never watched, but a lot of people I know who watch it say it's really good. So I've never seen it myself. Well, the question now out there is, could she actually come and join the Daredevil Born Again series? Other actors are. Could she? Well, she addressed that, kind of. This comes to us from the folks at Screenplay who wrote the following. Pardon me. As the Daredevil Born Again cast is currently filming, an MCU fan by the username Dark End Arrow recently asked Young via comic book if there may be a future for her as Elektra again. Young, who is currently headlining The Cleaning Lady on Fox, simply said that fans will have to, quote unquote, ask them, seemingly referring to the creatives involved with Daredevil Born Again. At the time of this story's publication, there have been no official reports about Young reprising the role of Elektra in Daredevil Born Again. All right. It's important to note, I've seen a lot of people running around saying, she didn't deny she was going to be in it. Yeah, but she didn't hint that she would be in it either. But she didn't do what a lot of the actors today do is, look, I would love to, but nobody's talked to me. I don't think I'm going to be part of it for now, but who knows what happens in the future, blah, 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 right? Here's the thing. Aside from Kingpin, I have a hard time imagining a Daredevil without an Elektra. I just have a bit of a hard time imagining that. It just, if you're going to have Daredevil and
Bullseye.
Well, the Bullseye's another thing. And we know Bullseye's coming back, right? That was already made official. Bullseye from the Netflix Daredevil series is coming back for the Disney Plus Born Again series. I would think not necessarily in season 1, but I think this is a character you got to bring back if you can. It's Elektra. She was such a key part of that series that if you're bringing back Bullseye, and I would make the argument she was more of a foundational character in that series than even Bullseye was. And you're bringing Bullseye back, you got Karen and Foggy. Now, I'm not going to argue Karen and Foggy were clearly more important characters in the Netflix series than Elektra was. But after them and Kingpin, I think it's her. She was more relevant to that series than Punisher was.
Also, she brought ninjas with her.
And she brought ninjas.
Just saying.
And fought ninjas.
She brought the hand with her.
And I have no idea about whether or not she will be in it. I think she should be, though. And if she's not in this one, when they inevitably do a Daredevil season 2, should anybody watch the new one, I think she'll be there. So I think they should bring her back, but I got no clue if they will or not. Rob, What do you think? Should they bring her back? And then also answer the question, will they bring her back? What do you think?
Well, the answer is always yes. Always bring Elektra back. Always bring ninjas back to Daredevil. Bring the hand back. I love the hand. And you know, in terms of the kind of, I mean, the thing about the Born Again storyline, when Frank Miller really defined Elektra and defined, you know, Born Again was that great storyline when he came back to the comic, and it had like Nuke and it had Karen Page and all that. So I mean, maybe it's too much, but if you've got Bullseye, there's no reason why you can't bring back Elektra. And I do think her answer, if you've signed an NDA and you can't say anything, or maybe you're in negotiations, I think we'll ask them, is a perfect answer.
Perfectly valid answer.
It totally open. You're not saying anything. You're just saying ask them, because it's not her place to say. And maybe she doesn't know. Maybe they didn't contact her. But I think ask them. She knows how to play the game. It's a great response. I think every actor should adopt that response. Put it on them. The onus goes off of you and onto the company making the movie. That way, Tom Holland doesn't give any spoilers. His answer should always be ask them. That's it. It's a perfect answer. Though, John, hope. I'm gonna go my Andy Dufresne route. Hope is a good thing. Maybe the best of things.
So you also think you have no idea.
I have no idea.
He's saying ask them.
I'm saying ask them. Ask them. But you know what? I would like to, I'm going to Fox Mulder that, and I would like to believe. I want to believe, John.
I want to believe
I
so
want to
bad.
believe. Just because, I mean, I'm a huge fan of what Miller did with Daredevil. I'm a huge fan of the Born Again storyline. Has one of my favorite moments in any comic book ever. When Matt Murdock's brownstone collapses, and there he is in the rubble, and he's holding up his Daredevil costume.
Yep.
And he knows that Kingpin did this. You just shouldn't have signed it. Because I love that. It's great.
All right, guys. Well, the question is to you. What do you think about her comments? A very, very diplomatic answer, but there are two questions here. Do you think they should bring her back, or should they move on from the Elektra character? You say, you know what, they did enough with her in Netflix, and it was great, but that was enough. And then the second question is, will they? Is she going to pop up in this series? We'll find out.
Ask them.
Just ask them. All right, guys. With that down, let's talk about this, shall we? At last year's CinemaCon, Sony kind of created a bit of a stir by doing two big announcements. Announcement number one was that they were doing another Spider-Man universe film with the character El Muerto. Cool. But then the second thing they announced was, and it's going to be played by international music icon Taylor Swift. I mean, Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny. And Bad Bunny comes walking out on stage. He comes out on stage to talk to everybody, and he's all excited about playing El Muerto and all this kind of stuff. Some time passes. Nothing gets heard from again. And then a number of months ago, you guys will remember that a story came out that said Bad Bunny was no longer going to be attached to the project. And a lot of us thought the project was now dead. But apparently now, El Muerto is back on. They're developing it again. Is Bad Bunny going to be in it? Nope. This comes to us from the Popverse, who wrote the following. This comes from a feature piece from Variety that casually mentioned, without citing any particular source, that the anti-hero comic book film was being developed again, but that Bad Bunny was out. The rapper slash wrestler slash actor first mentioned that he was no longer involved in the project in a Vanity Fair profile in September of 2023. But this is the first time that we've heard that the El Muerto movie was going ahead without him. All right. I'm not going to be facetious. You guys know how I feel about this. I think my wife is a big fan of Bad Bunny's music, and she's played a lot of it for me. Dude can get your hips swaying. I mean, this dude creates music.
That is very true.
It's very hard not to move your body when you hear his music. He's got some pretty killer music.
Yes, he does.
And I've seen him pop up in wrestling things. It's like, look at what that little guy is doing.
Bullet Train, dude.
It's pretty impressive what he can do, right? And I love Bullet Train. He popped up and played this character in Bullet Train. But, and there's no denying the star power he brings, 100%. But he's not an actor. And while he could just make a really angry face and yell, "I'm going to kill you" in Bullet Train, I mean, I could have done that. I couldn't have made it look as good as he made it look. But he's not an actor. And to suddenly now take him and make him the lead, that the whole movie is going to rest on your shoulders and your ability to make the audience buy into this movie. That was a mistake. And I said that at CinemaCon. I said, this is a mistake. He's going to bring a lot of eyeballs to it, get some people's attention. You know, Taylor Swift was in a couple of movies last year, and ain't nobody go to see those, even though she's like the biggest actor in the world. And it made me worried that their first priority was not to make the best movie possible. If your priority was to make the best movie possible, they would have gone out and got the best actor possible that was available to them to come in and do the role. And that was not Bad Bunny. And I like this guy a lot. And I'm not saying Bad Bunny can't become a good, serviceable actor. I think everybody can. I think Bad Bunny can as well. But he's not at the point that he can play the lead and carry a movie in something like this. So I would actually say this is probably good news for the movie. I think this means automatically the movie's going to be a little bit better than it was going to be, simply because they're probably going to end up with a much more talented actor playing the role. And a few years from now, we might be talking about Bad Bunny getting more acting roles and developing the craft and sharpening his skills and maybe getting to the point that he can be. But I don't think it's now. So, Rob, it's another question altogether about whether Sony should be making these Spider-Man-less Spider-Man movies, especially with Madam Web coming out and
Have we
nobody
checked
caring.
in with the ticket sales today?
I probably should do that in a little bit. That aside, I think this is actually a good thing for the movie. I don't know. How do you feel about this?
I completely agree with you. I mean, I think doing an El Muerto movie is a really good idea. And there's so many, you talk about, everybody talks about representation and things like that. But when you actually have a Latino character, there's so many great Latino actors, and many haven't broken in the United States yet. I mean, it's a great opportunity. Yeah, I know we want star power, but like you said, Bad Bunny is, no matter what, he could be the greatest actor in the world, but it's still stunt casting, and I understand that. Everybody, why not? You put a quantity in something and you're going to hopefully turn it into a hit. But I think, treat it like a movie. You need to find the best actor for the role. I mean, Shaq did not save Seal. I mean, as much as I love Shaq. I think he's so funny, and I love seeing him whenever he's doing everything, but he's just not an actor, and I wanted to love Steel because I love the whole Death of Superman, the Four Supermen and John Henry and all that. But I think this is a good idea that they have replaced him. I hope they do make the movie, though. I think it could be a banger.
All right, let's do Ray, give me some news music. Let's go to Madam Web Ticket Watch.
All
right. Since Rob brought it up, speaking of the Sony Spider-Man-less universe, we'll go to the first non-afternoon screening. This is opening day. Madam Web, yesterday I believe they had 5 tickets sold. Today,
Oh, no.
watch, it's half full.
Oh.
Still 5 tickets.
All right. Well, those 5 are dedicated.
So the good news is if you're worried about being able to get seats from Madam Web, you're probably going to be able to get seats from Madam Web.
But the bad news is nobody watched our show yesterday that lives in the vicinity of the Tyler Galleria.
Or maybe they didn't realize, we've got time. And Bad Bunny or not, I have a feeling El Muerto's ticket sales are going to look similar to this. But anyway, we'll see. All right, guys. With that down, we still got to talk about this Deadpool story. But before we do, we're going to take another quick break here and thank another sponsor of today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast, our friends making great product over at Fume. We want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Fume. Quitting cold turkey is great in theory, but you and I both know it's way more difficult than that. And that's why there's a better way to break your bad habits. We're not talking about some fake online promises. We're talking about our sponsor, Fume, and they look at the problem in a different way. Instead of a drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? Fume is an innovative, award-winning flavor-aired device that does just that. See, instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of bad, Fume is good. It's a habit you're free to enjoy and makes replacing your bad habit easy. I personally didn't know what to expect when I first got my Fume. I mean, I've never liked vapes, but my goodness, the taste. The first time I tried it, I was completely sold on it. It was incredible. Stopping is something we all put off because it's hard, but switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and even fun. Fume has served over 150,000 customers and has thousands of success stories, and there's no reason that can't be you. Join Fume in accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Head to tryfume.com and use the code Campea to save 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com and use the code Campea to save an additional 10% off your order today. And thank you to our friends at Fume for sponsoring today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast. All right, guys, that down. Let's get on to this. You know, we've talked a lot about, maybe too much, about the not great state that the MCU is in right now, right? At least compared to its own success, the state of the MCU is pretty rough. Maybe glorious compared to some other franchises that are going, but by its own standards, pretty rough. And we've talked a lot about how there is a lot riding on this Deadpool movie, man. A lot riding on Deadpool 3. And one director, Matthew Vaughn, who directed X-Men Days of Future Past, he not only believes that this Deadpool movie is going to be good, he believes that this Deadpool movie is literally going to save the MCU. This comes to us from Screen Rant, who, quoting Matthew Vaughn, said this: "That's going to be the jolt. The Marvel Universe is about to have a jolt of them, and it's going to bring that body back to life. I think Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman are about to save the whole Marvel Universe." I mean, that part again. It's going to bring that body, the dead body of the MCU, the corpse, it's going to bring that body back to life. I think Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman are about to save the whole Marvel Universe. Now listen, in life in general, but in entertainment specifically, we are all prone to hyperbole. But Rob, I would kind of suggest here that I don't know that Matthew Vaughn is wrong here, nor maybe even exaggerating. Might be exaggerating to suggest that Marvel is a dead corpse at the side of the road right now. But look, we've always said this around our show. Winning cures everything, right? Just does. With the MCU being quiet right now, with stuff actually going on screen now that Echo is in the rearview mirror, thankfully, all that's coming out theatrically in 2024 for Marvel is Deadpool 3. That creates an opportunity not just to inject the MCU with a great, fan-pleasing, box office success, critically loved films, given the opportunity to do that, but it then also gives them the opportunity that is going to be the statement of the MCU in all of 2024. That as the audience then sits and waits until Captain America 4, which I believe now is coming out in 18 years, as the audience sits and waits for Captain America 4, the lasting impression of the last thing we all saw in theaters was, hopefully, this great, awesome, fun movie. And you're going to generate, if you crack it out of the park, and that's a big if, you're going to generate a state where people are going to have 8, 9, 10, whatever months to sit there and go, when is the next MCU movie? Because that hasn't been the feeling lately with the MCU. Woo! Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. When's the next MCU movie? No, that hasn't been the case. So there is really a definitive opportunity here to not just inject a great film into the mainstream with it, but then also have that movie be the lingering thing that you have as audiences wait. Now, the problem with that is, the double-edged sword on that is, if Deadpool 3, sucks the proverbial hose, then that's going to be the impression that's going to sit with everybody until Captain America 4, right? Oh, that Deadpool 3 sucked. And now we just get to sit there and think about nothing but Deadpool 3. No palate cleanser coming. No, like the good thing about some of the MCU stuff that hasn't been great is that there was at least something else coming out shortly that if that's good, it can kind of clean the palate a little bit, right? If Deadpool 3 is bad, and I'm not suggesting remotely that it is, I have all the faith in the world in this film. I'm just saying, if it's bad, it could be real bad for the MCU. So I agree with Matthew Vaughn, Rob. I think this could be the thing that drastically improves the current situation for the MCU. They just got to be careful that it doesn't go the opposite direction because it can do that too. What do you think about Matthew Vaughn's comments?
Look, they make me hopeful because I love the X-Men. But first of all, I don't see this movie as an MCU film. I see this movie as the exclamation point or the period or the comma or the semicolon on the Fox X-Men universe because these characters don't exist in the MCU.
Right, but I think Marvel's going to make it their job when the marketing for this movie comes out. To make it,
no doubt,
to us be an MCU film.
No doubt.
But that hasn't started yet.
I totally agree, but it's not going to start that way. So this movie might be the greatest movie in the world, and it might be. I hope it is because I love both these characters. I love Jackman's portrayal. Remember the last time he played Wolverine, it was Logan, and we all love that. So I'd love to see. He looks great in the yellow suit. We all wanted to see that too. I hope this movie's great, and I have to say that I have set myself up for this. It's one of my most eagerly awaited movies of the year. I think the Sean Levy, Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman trilogy or triumvirate trinity is irresistible. I want it to be great, but I also think the level of disappointment is extreme for me because we're all expecting a great deal from this movie, and I wonder if our expectations exceed the ability of them to even if they bring down a burning bush or two, the 10 Commandments from the mountain, if it's that good, it still might not be good enough. But whether it's going to save the MCU, well, one, I don't know if the MCU needs saving. It needs rehabilitation.
It certainly needs at least some resuscitating.
It needs some resuscitation. But hearing that from Matthew Vaughn, look, filmmakers are prone to hyperbole when it comes to things like this. We've seen it before. James Gunn saying The Flash was the greatest superhero movie ever.
It was pretty good, though.
But I really like The Flash.
I liked it.
I hope it's good. I hope he's right. I really do, because I want this movie to be good so badly. And I'm looking from what we've heard, there's so many fun things that I think we're going to get in this movie that I really can't wait to see it. If nothing else, it's going to be a delicious souffle that I think is going to put a smile on everyone's face, and it's R-rated.
Yep. And one good thing that this movie has is rarely in superhero movies you get a second shot. They had their first shot with that Wolverine Origins, Deadpool. All their bad ideas came out there. So let's get all the good ones coming out in this movies.
It can't be overemphasized the importance of perception. Because I remember back a number of years ago when the DCEU was kind of disappointing audiences, right? Listen, you guys know how I feel about Man of Steel. I think it's the most underrated comic book film of all time, but a lot of the audience didn't like it. I like Batman vs. Superman, but a lot of the audience didn't like it. And so what would happen, though, is you'd have that disappointment with a lot of the fans, but then Comic-Con would come, and if there's two things that I think the DCEU always did better than the MCU, number one is their trailers, and number two, I always thought they had better scores. Not that Marvel's had bad trailers or bad scores. I'm just saying I just thought they always had a really good edge in that, right? So Comic-Con would come, and everybody would show up at Comic-Con and kind of feeling a little bit dour about the DCEU because, the films never. But then they would drop some piss yourself amazing trailer. Like some trailer that would just blow everybody's minds and go, yeah. And inevitably, what always came out on social media after those trailers drop? R.I.P. Marvel. Oh, this is the end of the MCU because that's how good their trailers were. They would rock at these trailers. And all of a sudden, all the dourness for at least a few months would be replaced by this optimism. Like, okay, now the DCEU is about to get on track, right? Deadpool is in a position where it can be that. It can be that thing that is taking a lot of the MCU fans like myself who are feeling rather dour about the state of the MCU at the moment and have us go, there we go. There we go. Now we're cooking with gas, as my old gym teacher used to say. Now we're cooking with gas. I don't really know what that means, but you know, it has an opportunity to do that. And then we would have to wait until Captain America 4, but hopefully, because Rob, I think it's going to make a world of difference for Captain America 4 if we're leading into Captain America 4 where everybody's still feeling dour about the MCU, or leading into Captain America 4 with a lot of people feeling optimistic again. And Deadpool has the opportunity to do that. Do you think it will?
I think it will. You know what this movie has that no other MCU before it has had?
Hugh Jackman.
Well, high wattage star power.
Yeah.
I mean, Ryan Reynolds is a star. You know, whether it's Welcome to Wrexham, whether it's his Mint Mobile commercials, or whether it's the body of work he's already done with director Sean Levy. You know, Free Guy, The Atom Project, and now this. I mean, they're working together. This is a group of guys that have gotten together specifically to knock it out of the park. This is a dream team that's been put together. You know, this is the Battle of the Network Stars, but brought into, I don't know if that's going to work, but no one knows what that is. brought into the movie realm. And I mean, it's theirs to lose. And I don't think we've ever had a comic book movie, you know, that has this kind of star power in between these two charismatic guys. You know, both song and dance men, sort of. Hugh Jackman can kill it on Broadway, and Ryan Reynolds can sing, as we saw in his holiday movie.
Little Christmas movie?
You know, I mean, these are showmen. You know, these are two showmen that are coming together that understand their characters. I mean, Deadpool exists on screen because of Ryan Reynolds, and Hugh Jackman agreed to come back to the signature role that he's been, 25 years. I mean, it will be, 24 years that he's been on screen, but 25 years that he's been playing this role. And that's astonishing. So I think that these guys, it's their mission in life to deliver the banger of all bangers.
Can I just mention that I think it's awesome that as you were setting up your point about mega star power, and then to emphasize Ryan Reynolds' mega star power, you went to producer of Welcome to Wrexham and star of the Mint Mobile ads. Like none of the other stuff. That's the credentials of Ryan Reynolds.
I was trying to just show his diversification.
More recent.
I mean, yes. The fact is, no, what I meant by that is Ryan Reynolds is now first and foremost an entrepreneur.
He's a businessman.
He is a businessman, and this is doing some good business. It ain't show friends, it's show business. And this movie, I could see Ryan Reynolds saying, I mean, I'm sure he's going to make more, but this could be Ryan Reynolds' last movie. He might want to hang it up after this because he's making far more money doing other things. And if he goes out on this kind of a high note, maybe, or at least take some time away from acting.
I'll tell you why I don't agree.
I mean, he's not going to do it. I don't either.
I mean, maybe a little bit of time away from acting because, I mean, listen, he's told me that he is feeling an increased amount of priority in his life to just spend more time with his kids and his wife, right? But the reason why I don't believe he's hanging it up here is because, and this is me speculating, I can't see Kevin Feige or Marvel going to Ryan Reynolds and say, okay, we'll open Pandora's box by having a Deadpool movie without saying, we'll bring Deadpool over. We'll do a Deadpool movie. We want a 3-picture commitment. I'm not saying they did that. I'm just saying I have a hard time believing that they would sign up for this movie without getting a certain commitment from Ryan Reynolds for a certain number of films. You know what I mean?
Look, I totally agree with that. And also, now he's the biggest star of the MCU. If he comes over to the MCU, there is nobody in the MCU that's more of a star than Ryan Reynolds. He now goes to the top of the pyramid, and he's the person that we're going to want to see. Whether he's in Secret Wars, whether he destroys the Marvel Universe, whatever he's going to do as Deadpool, he becomes one of their marquee attractions. I mean, what other character do you want to see other than bringing Tony Stark back or bringing back Steve Rogers? That's
it, right? There's like you bring Ryan Reynolds in, he's the face now of the MCU, bringing back Robert Downey Jr. or Chris Evans. He kind of becomes, by default, the presumptive face of the MCU in a lot of ways.
I mean,
right?
Wouldn't it be hilarious if the end of Deadpool 3 ends with him in the MCU standing around, well, what next? And somebody comes up to him and says, the Avengers need a leader.
I can't.
He's not a leader.
And then
That's just the end of the movie.
You don't put Deadpool on any kid's lunchbox.
Yeah. Now, Colossus. By the way, have we heard any word about whether the dude who played Colossus in the Deadpool movies is coming over? I can't remember. Because I think they said Negasonic is coming back. You know what? Yes, I do now remember them saying Colossus come back. Can I say, Colossus in the Deadpool movies is one of my favorite secondary characters in movies at all. Like, he's such a great foil for Deadpool himself. And he's just so wholesome. He's so good. And listen, you can crack all you want about Deadpool 2's Juggernaut. That fight between Colossus and Juggernaut is one of my, not in the top 5, but one of my favorite comic book movie fights ever. I just love it.
By the way, they could re-announce, there is a comic run called Uncanny Avengers.
Yep.
So what if they decide, Kang Dynasty, that didn't really work out. Our next Avengers movie is going to be called the Uncanny Avengers. Come on. That'd break the internet, at least for a day.
All right, guys. With that down, let's do what we love to do around here. The most important part of the show, go over and start taking some of your questions. Now, like I said at the beginning of the show, due to some administrative stuff around here, we have to keep today's show a little bit short. So we're only going to take a few questions here, and then we're going to sign off. So, Jonathan, what do we got?
We got Brandon, who writes, do you buy into the theory some online film fans have that the massive budgets in Hollywood are a result of money laundering operations by studios?
No, I don't. I think that's been debunked definitively many times. All right, what's next?
TJ Perry says, heard of Wahlberg's new King Arthur? I first saw the story on ESPN and I bawled. True story of a dog who befriended an extreme race team for 200 miles.
Yeah, where did we see the trailer for that?
We've seen it a couple times.
Yeah, we have seen.
And it just looks like it's going to be a movie that I would like, but I don't want to watch it.
It starts off like the first little bit of the trailer, I'm like, oh God, I can't wait to not watch this movie. Yeah. And then by the end of the trailer, I'm like, when does it come out? Of course we're dog guys, so there's that.
Yeah, man.
All right, what's next?
Raymond Verada says, will Sony put all their heroes in a B-Vengers film? Right now, I feel like B-Vengers are in the MCU. So
right now the MCU is the B-Vengers. You know what? They really shouldn't. I hope they're realizing that they should not. Like, they might have been thinking about that. And listen, if Morbius worked the way Venom worked, and then if Madam Web cracked like that too, like if Madam Web made $600 million, which it's not going to, but I mean, if it had, there'd be an argument made to then cross them over. But
Madam Web might not make $600.
Yeah, like I mean, again, 5 tickets sold in that theater right now. So there may have been a thought about that before. They can't be thinking that now. There's just no way. Right. All right, what's next?
Taki75 says, my top 5 best directors: John Huston, Akira Kurosawa, Martin Scorsese, Luis Buñuel, Stanley Kubrick, and honorable mention Woody Allen, Steven Spielberg.
I mean, all great.
Respectable.
Again, to me, the greatest filmmaker of all time is Steven Spielberg. Most nominated, all that kind of stuff, but mostly because I often talk about this. His films, he can do every kind of film there is. Like the other years, like, oh, people say, well, Spielberg's never done a musical. Okay. And he did West Side Story, a movie I shit talk for like a full year. Say, I don't like that Steven's doing this. Who wants to watch West Side Story? It was one of the best films of the year. Got him another nomination for it. You want to do period piece? You can do period piece. You want to do true story? You can do true story. You want to do biopic? He'll do biopic. You want to do sci-fi epic? No one's done it as good as him. You want to make a monster shark movie? Go ahead and do that. You make Jurassic Park. He can do every kind of movie and be the best at all of them. And that's why, like, I think I would put Scorsese on the Mount Rushmore of directors. I would. But I'm just saying, you know what you're gonna get with a Scorsese film, right? He has a tone, and it's great. He has a way of telling his stories, and it's great, but he's very much in his own lane. And in a creative art like making movies, that's why when I look at Spielberg and I see this guy who can literally do it all and have all of them get nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. that's why I personally always have him at the top of my list.
But I also have to give it up to our viewer for putting Kubrick and also putting John Huston on his list, because I'm a huge John Huston fan, and John Huston was the only man who could play Noah Cross in Polanski's Chinatown. He was also an actor, and that guy's voice, I mean, he's one of the screen's greatest villains ever, and only he could have done that.
All right, what's next?
J Logo says 2023 Universe Savior is the Flash. Says many sources, including directors. 2024. Wait, I feel like is Deadpool 3. Says many sources, including directors. I think he's saying like many directors are saying the Flash was so great. Now they're saying Deadpool 3 is so great.
Well, number one, the Flash was great. You can have a different subjective opinion if you want. That's fine. My opinion is still that it was great. But what you're talking about and what this is are two different things. One, you were talking about a movie that people actually saw. Tom Cruise, when he said, this is what the movies need right now, because Tom Cruise saw the film. James Gunn had seen the film. A couple of other directors had seen the film and they came out. Nobody has seen Deadpool yet, right?
It's not finished.
Yeah, no. So these are totally different situations. This is just Matthew Vaughn saying, it's Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds. And we've seen what Ryan did with the first two and his crack writing team did with the first two. This thing's going to save the MCU, but it's predictive. It's not definitive because he hasn't seen the film. So those are two very, very, very different situations.
It's like when you put a good matchup together, like people are going to pay money for it, but the boxing match could be a dud.
Yeah,
but
it's
like a guarantee. Yeah.
It's a difference between saying that's going to be a great fight versus saying that was a great fight. Right. In the Flash situation, that was people saying that was a great movie.
Right.
In this situation, that's going to be a great movie. So it's two different things. All right, what's next?
Obian says, thoughts on Alan Rickman as Captain Atom? I think would be a great choice if Gunn was, or Gunn even has plans for that character. Of course, let's get Jensen Ackles as Batman. His voice is doing great as Batman.
I love Jensen Ackles. I can't see him as Batman. I love this guy, but I can't see him as Batman. I don't see him as Captain Atom. Now all I see him as is He-Man.
Yeah, Richmond is better than Captain Atom. He deserves a better role than the Captain.
Well, I also think it takes a little more acting to bring a Captain Atom, whatever. But ever since our viewer the other day said He-Man, that's all I can think of. I can only see him as Atom of Eternia. I could totally see him as, by the way, he's also going to be in that Henry Cavill Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare that I cannot wait to see. All right. Is this our last question today?
Last one.
Great. What's next?
Palasha says, any good movies documentary showing the day-to-day working life of a movie director from pre-production to post-production to release? Thanks, y'all. It's kind of documenting the whole process.
I can't really think of one.
You know
Well, there's Hearts of Darkness, a filmmaker's apocalypse that has Coppola
that's
making.
a good example, yeah.
And I would say this, one of my favorite DVD documentaries ever produced is Under Pressure, Making the Abyss, which is going to be on the 4K. I think it's on YouTube. It's James Cameron's adventure making the Abyss. It's insane. You watch that and go, oh my God.
Oh, sorry, Rob. It's not a documentary, but check out the special features on the Iron Man 1, the special disc.
With Jon Favreau?
He goes through the whole process of like everything. It's like one of my favorite non-documentary walkthroughs of how that movie was made. So.
And just to toot my own horn, my own documentary on the making of Superman Returns begins with pre-production all the way through production, but it doesn't have post. But it is 3 hours long.
All right, guys. And that'll do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show podcast. Thank you so much for being here and making this show part of your day. Big special thank you to all you guys who sent in those questions. Number one, because you gave us fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported our channel as you did it. And all of us involved in the show, thank you guys so very much for your support. So, for Ray Ora,
See you later.
Jonathan Voico,
Later.
writer, director, producer, Robert Meyer Burnett.
All the love.
My name's John Campea. And until next time, my friends, bye-bye.